Did you get a new headset for Christmas and you don't know what to play? Or do you have a headset but you only use it to play Beat Saber? Today we're going to recommend some other games you should play.
It's Recommendation Royale 2, baby! The Quickening! Hello and welcome to Head-Mounted Destinations, a podcast about virtual reality. We provide our perspective as game developers and give you, the listener, a peek behind the curtain for anyone interested in how VR games are made. I'm your friendly neighborhood host and level designer, Carlos.
And I'm Matt. I'm a gameplay programmer.
Today is Recommendation Royale 2.
This is a follow-up to an episode we did last year, right around this holiday time. So we're going to link that in the show notes if you want to go back and listen to what we recommended last year.
The reason we made the Recommendation Royale to begin with is because we wanted to address that too common question / excuse to not play VR, which is like, what game should I play? There are no games on the platform. And we beg to differ. We beg to differ with vigorous passion. And because of that, we spawned the Recommendation Royale.
If you want to just cut to the chase, we'll put all the links to all the games in the show notes, but listen on if you want specific reasons behind playing each game.
And if you're listening to the show, we put gameplay videos alongside what we're talking about as much as we can to point out specific experiential moments that we had or like mechanics we're trying to highlight, anything like that. So if you're interested in seeing the gameplay related to what we're talking about, check us out on YouTube, Head-Mounted Destinations.
We've picked these games because we think that they're holistically pretty great experiences and they're generally friendly to beginners or people who don't have a lot of concepts about how complicated VR mechanics should work in the current space. Also, right off the top, we should mention there's sort of the obvious back-of-the-box choices: Beat Saber, Pistol Whip, and Superhot VR. These are the things that we think most people are already familiar with and probably play as the first things that they experience. So we're not going to include this in our list, but check those out if you haven't.
Those 3 games, fantastic games. You likely know of them if you are outside of the VR sphere because they have like budget enough for marketing to get commercials and things like that. Some of these other games that we'll be mentioning won't have as much coverage, but these could be arguably better titles.
Today's recommendations are broken up into a couple of categories. We've got calm games, which are games that don't force you to be super active and work up a sweat. Then we've got action games, which do cause you to work up a sweat. And then finally, we've got multiplayer games, which are games that are fine when played solo, but better when played with friends. Most of these games don't involve violence. We've broken out games that do involve violence into a subcategory under action because we know that some players are just not into violence. And so we wanted to put sort of a content warning around those games. All right, so let's dive in. First, we've got 4 calm games to recommend. For calm games, we've got some cerebral games and we've got some slower games that are less mentally engaging. For the cerebral games, the first up is Red Matter. We recommend this for both players who are new to VR and players who have VR. Carlos, why are we recommending this?
We're recommending Red Matter because it evokes this feeling of curiosity and play that many other games don't necessarily give you the time to do. It also has a large amount of interactions and interesting setups for these simple interactions, such as lever pulls and button presses and things like that. It's a great game to learn how to play VR if you're a new player. But if you're a returning player, it's a game that is just soaking in mood and atmosphere. And the story it's trying to tell is one of espionage and intrigue. And the way it uses the environment to create puzzles and tell that story is executed very well. And I still think about some of those rooms and puzzles that I played to this day. And it's been several months.
The other suggestion we have that we've categorized as cerebral is Puzzling Places. I put this on the list because it's a really, really interesting use of VR. Puzzling Places is a jigsaw puzzle, but in VR. So they've taken 3D photogrammetry scans of real places such as castles and other interesting locations, and they've broken it up into different sized chunks that only fit together in one way. And you have to take those chunks from around you and snap them together, and you eventually build the place back out in front of you. So it's like doing a jigsaw puzzle, but with 3D chunks of an environment, and you've sort of got a god's eye view of this place as it comes together. And that's just a really interesting take on the idea of a spatial puzzle, and it's something that can really only happen in VR. And it's actually kind of relaxing. You can really get into a groove of reassembling these places. So I definitely recommend it.
That sounds awesome. And speaking of relaxing games, let's check out some calming titles, starting with Puzzle Bobble, Vacation Odyssey. Now, full disclosure, this is a game from Servios that I worked on. So with all disclosures aside, Puzzle Bobble Vacation Odyssey is a match 3 bubble shooter done in 3 dimensions. So typically when you have a match 3 bubble shooter, you're trying to shoot a orange bubble to 2 other orange bubbles so that they all pop. Now, the board is a 3-dimensional model, so when the bubbles pop, the board will spin because of the impulse from the pop that had happened. And you're trying to reveal the core at the center of each 3-dimensional model by popping more bubbles, slowly unraveling it like some sort of ball of yarn or onion. And you're doing this in cute tropical environments along in this vacation odyssey with Bub and Bob, the 2 baby dragons, as they're trying to save the other baby dragons from the evil baby wizard. And everything looks cute and the music's very cute and it's just chill. That's why you should play this.
The other calm game that I want to recommend here is Vacation Simulator. Job Simulator and Vacation Simulator have been really popular in the past, but I think they still hold up as something that first-time players should experience. I think it does a really good job of fulfilling a primary fantasy that people have about VR, which is going into a very rich and reactive world and just messing around and discovering this like other reality. It's framed as a bunch of mini games and experiences that you can go around and taste in a relaxing way. There's not time pressure. There's no one attacking you. You just get to go around and mess around and have fun in an environment, which I think is something that a lot of people want out of VR. All right, let's get into action games here.
Action games, let's go. Let's bring the energy up by talking about pacifist action games first.
Yeah, enough of this calm game stuff. Let's talk about games that make you sweat.
Woo!
First up on the list, Dance Central.
That's right, our first pacifist action game is Dance Central. Dance Central VR is a game where you will be dancing. Primarily, you're going to be doing these choreography routines with another character in front of you in VR. You will mirror the VR character's movements, and it'll be to pop culture music, and it'll be a very good fun time while giving you the cardio that you want for the day. On the side of non-cardio stuff, there's a cute like mechanic that you engage with the story through a cell phone, and you get voicemails and have to text through the cell phone to progress through, and it helps kind of tie in this socialite dance club environment that they set up. And it's really just like throwing yourself back in like a crowded room while not having to actually be in said crowded room and dance like you're by yourself. If you're new to virtual reality, Dance Central is a good way to ease into the faster-paced games within the action genre.
Next recommendation is Racket NX. This is honestly one of my favorite VR games of all time. If you like the arcadey simplicity of Beat Saber, then Racket NX might be one to check out. The best way to describe it is it's racquetball plus pinball. So you're standing in a giant half dome and you're hitting a ball with a paddle towards the wall. And when the ball hits the wall, it bounces around and racks up a bunch of points and then eventually slows down and gets spit back towards you to hit it again. It's a great example of 360 untethered VR being used really well. And in terms of the visuals and the audio, it's incredibly satisfying and has that same sort of polish that you'd find in Beat Saber. So if you're into that sort of arcadey experience, definitely check out Racket NX. All the games that we've just discussed are non-violent, but we're about to go into a section where we talk about games that have violence. So if that interests you, listen on.
And if not, cover your ears. Sensitive, violent things are going to be said.
Amusingly, the first game is not that violent. I mean, yes, you have a gun and you're going to be shooting people, but it's mostly about the parkour. We're going to recommend Stride.
That's right, Stride. We recently did a whole episode on this game. It is an amazing parkour, free running type experience within VR. It'll get your heart pumping. It'll ask you to run, jump, slide, reach out and grab things. It's just a fully kinetic experience that tailors itself to being very arcadey and replayable for now. Where it's coming soon, it'll be having a more focused linear story mode, and we're very excited to see where it goes.
If you want to live out your parkour fantasy, get Stride. Next up is Until You Fall. We've also done an episode on this. If you're interested in some sword combat, but in a very structured way, Until You Fall is the best option out there.
One could think of it like Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, but within VR, and with swords. Everything is telegraphed pretty clearly, and you have to act in a very particular way in order to execute the actions you want to do, and it's very quick, cool, neon swordplay fantasy that just gives you a stronger and stronger feeling as you slice your way through the waves of the neon dead.
Yeah, the gameplay is the primary draw, but also the visuals and the sort of world that it builds out a little bit is very compelling. It's just all around a fantastic game. Next up is Swarm, which we've also done an episode on. I'm seeing a bit of a pattern here.
Swarm is this radical arcade game that gives you a grapple hook on each arm as well as a submachine gun or just general weapon on each arm, and says, hey, you're Spider-Man now, but with 2 SMGs. Also, the floor is lava. Now start zipping around, don't touch the floor. Oh, and by the way, Galaga is now entering the level, and all these little robots are going to chase after you. You better wipe them out. Try to get the high score. Try to use your abilities like slow motion and your momentum with the grapple hooks to outpace the robots. Get the drop on them, shoot your guns a whole lot, and don't touch the floor. Never touch the floor. That's the golden rule of this game. You're Spider-Man with SMGs. Enough said.
Finally, for our violent game recommendations, we've got Blade and Sorcery Nomad.
Contrary to what we have said about Blade and Sorcery and/or physics-focused combat games, I think Blade and Sorcery is a good pick for those new to VR, as well as having owned a Quest for, let's say, a year or so. Blade and Sorcery Nomad presents this now dungeon crawling physics combat adventure game in a sense that almost seems like Might and Magic Dark Messiah levels of freedom and goofy creativity with the combat and interaction with NPCs. So if you're new to VR, this is going to be an entirely different, maybe opposite flavor of Until You Fall when it comes to the combat. And if you've been in the VR game for a while and you're like, hey, I'm not sure if I should check out this Blade and Sorcery, it's worth checking out now because it has been fleshed out with enough features and presents a way to interact with the sandbox it had originally that is pleasant for those who just want the game when it's done. So now let's talk about multiplayer games to tell your friends to get and maybe even convince them to get a headset to play these games. Maybe this tickles their fancy in just a way that makes them want to buy more, and we can convert the masses, the VR masses.
As we said before, these are fine to play solo, but they really shine when you play with friends. The first up is Walkabout Mini Golf, which we've played together quite a bit.
We've played Walkabout Mini Golf for several hours at this point, I believe, because it is just a very wholesome, fun visual and gameplay experience, as well as a social experience. This game is great to play alone if you want to just chill out and kind of get serene, but it becomes a almost identical in a social way experience to going out to mini golf with your friends, but you're now playing in spaces that you could only play in VR. You're hitting little putters off the gardens of Babylon into a fountain. You're exploring space stations with hidden mini golf balls for you to collect and alien eggs for you to discover for scavenger hunts. You can't get that in real life, but you can get the interactivity of pantomiming with your friends, playing mini golf, high-fiving, and talking just as easily in VR for a fraction of the price.
Finally, we've got one of our perennial favorites, Echo Arena.
Echo Arena is a great game that at times can provide the thrill of playing Rocket League with friends and nailing that shot from a distance where you like jump out of your seat and you fist pump. But warning for those that are new to VR or motion sick sensitive, this game does take place in 0G and it does have you moving at variable speeds. So that might cause some discomfort. But if you do not have those issues and you can jump right into this 0G ultimate frisbee-like game, then you will find yourself having a lot of fun exploring the mechanics, how they work, exploring the social lobbies and toying around with the various interactables that they have floating there.
While this is an amazing game, you probably don't want to jump into it solo because at this point you're just going to get schooled by a bunch of people who are like really, really, really good at the game and it's not going to be fun. So it's definitely worth playing a match with friends.
But it will be the most can only be done in VR game that you will play, and the mechanics really start to explode and be just so satisfying and give you that fist pump, hell yeah, 3-pointer moment. I know I sort of jokingly mentioned this at the top of the show, but I think maybe we should declare who our recommendation Royale winners would be. If now we've made this list, and we spent a lot of time making this list, if we got stuck on an island with enough Wi-Fi to give us one of these games on our Oculus Quest, what would we download?
Ooh, that's really hard. That's a hard call.
The recommendation Royale winner, Matt. The people need to know. They don't have enough money for the 12 games we just talked about. They want to know what's that one game we should get, which I agree, it is very hard. We could think about it for a moment.
I'm really torn between 4 of these. I'm torn between Racket NX, Stride, Until You Fall, and Swarm. I think all of those have really, really engaging core loops and have a pretty decent amount of replayability.
Okay, so Matt's 4 champions are Racket NX, Stride, Until You Fall, and Swarm. If I had to pick 4 as like candidates, right? So I was going to say actually like Dance Central might have been my pick. But if we're doing like candidates, I would say Dance Central, Stride, Swarm, and Until You Fall, honestly, actually, like, so we line up on Stride, Until You Fall, and Swarm. Let's get rid of the candidates of Racket NX and Dance Central. I'm sorry, much love to you, but we overlap on these 3 games. So now, I guess if we had to pick 2 of these 3 games, what are we picking? I'll start off. I would pick Stride and Until You Fall. What would you pick, Matt?
I think I would do Swarm and... I mean, I guess I would have to pick Stride primarily because it has the promise of getting updated in the future with more modes and more content. And I love the free-flowing mobility that it provides, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. So I'd have to do Stride as my other pick.
Okay. So then we doubled on Stride, and we have one separate. I think that's our winner. Our first recommendation Royale winner is going to be Stride. And I kind of really liked this format. I thought it was fun. It was sort of impromptu, in all honesty, but I think that was kind of fun. What did you think?
Yeah, I think that was a great format. And yeah, Stride's a great recommendation if like you had to pick one game to try out to get you out of the rut or to introduce you to the possibilities of VR. Stride's a good example. I guess a little bit of a Motion sickness warning, because it does involve smooth locomotion, but...
Right, yeah, you'll be pumping your arms to run, you might have to slide under things, you'll be doing some jumping and some swinging, but this is absolutely a game that is worth trying out, and, you know, if you do get motion sick and you start to feel that way, then, it's not worth putting yourself through harm to play, but at least try it if you don't know it makes you sick. It's a sick game to play.
All right, that's the end of our second recommendation Royale episode. This year's winner is Stride, but we recommend you check out all of these games. As we mentioned before, the links for all these games will be in the show notes. That's the description of the YouTube video, or if you go to headmountedpodcast.com, there's a whole page with full show notes for each episode. I hope you've enjoyed listening to us elevator pitch 12 games over the course of this episode. And I hope it's given you some idea of what to play next if you're stuck in a rut and you haven't been playing a lot of new VR games, or if you just got a Quest for Christmas or whatever and you're looking for games to play. Did you like this episode of Head Mounted Destinations? Then we only have one thing to ask from you. Share this episode with someone else you think would like to hear it. Send this episode to them.
And if they like to listen or watch the show, they can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, or Apple Podcasts. We include gameplay video with the YouTube, so give them a look.
If you have a different idea about which game we should have recommended, you should post it on our subreddit, reddit.com/r/headmountedpodcast.
And tell your friends about Head Mounted Destinations. Word of mouth helps us out immensely.
Thank you for listening. We'll see you at the next Head Mounted Destination.